which I'd already mentioned beforehand. Senator Lionhelm.
Thank you, Chair. I think my questions are for the Acting Commissioner. Can you offer an opinion as to what's prompted the rise in tobacco smuggling?
I guess there'd be a number of factors at play, Senator.
Is that a premise, Mr. Acting Commissioner, with which we agree?
Yes, I think there's a number of factors at play. Obviously, the price of tobacco would be one. The ease by which people can illegally smuggle tobacco. There'd be a number of factors. It could be another. The regulatory arrangements around retail outlets could be another. There's a whole range of factors, I think, that contribute to the attractiveness of illicit tobacco as a market, both as a supplier and as a consumer.
Do you think demand for illicit tobacco, untaxed tobacco, has diversified the business model of organised crime?
Yes, I think that organised crime has become more involved in the supply and the wholesale level of illicit tobacco.
Okay. And roughly, what share of your admin costs associated with preventing illegal imports would be related to the tobacco aspect of it?
I don't think we talk about administrative costs, but certainly we established in 2015 a tobacco strike team.
Yeah.
And the tobacco strike team was actually I think it was for 20 FTE. It was a lapsing measure.
20 FTE, did you say?
20 FTE, 20 investigators, and it was a lapsing measure that lapses at the end of this current financial year. And so since its establishment, they've seized in excess of 104 tonnes of smuggled tobacco and 233 million smuggled cigarettes, and that's the equivalent in revenue terms of $232 million. So the tobacco strike team has been incredibly successful, but our seizures at the border are far in excess of that. I mean, that's just the strike team. But we've actually, as at 31 January 2018, we've seized this financial year 220 tonnes of undeclared tobacco by equivalent weight this financial year.
So your staff are normally have responsibility for stopping import of illegal products like methamphetamine and heroin. How do you motivate them to stop the import of a legal product like tobacco? Is the motivation to stop illegal drugs different from the motivation to stop tax evasion?
Well, I guess it's core to the culture of the ABF in terms of our role as the customs service for Australia. Our role is obviously to prevent prohibited imports getting across our borders, whether they be drugs, tobacco, asbestos, child sex-like dolls. There's a whole range of things that we try and stop coming into Australia. There's also a whole range of things we try and stop getting out of Australia. Cash smuggling, counter-proliferation type activities to stop, those sorts of commodities leaving our shores. And our workforce, what I'll say is this, whenever Senator, I'd invite you to visit any of our sites, what you'll find with the Border Force when you get to any of our operational areas is the incredible commitment of our employees. They're just committed to the cause in protecting our border. But also as customs officers, it's in our DNA, I suppose, that we're there to protect revenue and to raise revenue. We do collect after the tax office. We're the second biggest collector of revenue at the border, and it's a big part of our mission to make sure that we collect revenue, we maximise the collection of revenue, and that those who seek to defraud us, as in the revenue, or underpay, or underdeclare, or circumvent, their responsibility in terms of duty, then it's in our DNA to go after that as well. So I don't find it difficult to motivate our officers. In fact, if you met the tobacco strike team, they love what they do, and they do a great job. And they know also that by taking out those wholesalers, they're actually making a dent in organised crime, because the profits from tobacco are being fed back into transnational crime syndicates, as amongst others. So I don't think it's a hard sell.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that. Now, I accept that you're probably not able to discuss details here, but Border Force Officer Craig Richard Eakin was arrested in August 2017 for allegedly assisting the smuggling of tobacco. Can you tell me what Mr Eakin was charged with? What's the status of his court case, and has he been dismissed from Border Force?
I can't tell you. I've got First Assistant Secretary Cheryl Moy coming to the table, who runs our Integrity and Professional Standards area, who will give you more detail. Obviously, very difficult for us to make too much comment given it's in front of the courts.
Understood.
Senator Cheryl Moy, First Assistant Secretary, Integrity, Security and Assurance. Mr Eakin was charged with multiple charges that are with the AFP, so we can't, as you would expect, comment on the case. The case is still before the courts.
Still before the court.
He had a hearing last week. His bail was extended and he's due to appear again in court on the 18th of April.
Is he still technically an employee of the department?
Technically, he's an employee. He's on suspension without pay due to the criminal charges, and that will remain until such time as the court process has been finalised, so that we don't cut across in our investigations anything to do with the police investigations.
All right, thank you. And a final question. Are you confident that, leaving the issue of Mr Eakin to one side, there are no current Border Force staff assisting tobacco smuggling?
Senator, we are going to great lengths to make sure that we've got no people in our organisation who are doing the wrong thing. When I did a press conference in relation to Mr Eakin, I made the point that our officers do incredibly difficult work. They do an amazing job at the border. Just one corrupt officer affects all of us, lets the whole side down and affects the reputation of the whole organisation. So with the Department of Home Affairs and where Ms Moy works, we are going through very detailed vetting processes with our employees to make sure that we have no other people in our organisation doing the wrong thing. Can I give you a guarantee, any more than the Federal Police Commissioner could, or any more than any head of any other organisation can give you a guarantee that there's nobody else in the organisation who's acting corruptly? No, I can't. But what I can give you a guarantee about is that we're absolutely committed to rooting it out, and we're doing everything we can to make sure that we're as corruption resistant as we can be.
So this is my final question, Chair. From where I sit, it would seem that in terms of that corruption issue, there would be an order of magnitude different in thinking between assisting a drug smuggler with a product which is acknowledged to be harmful, and assisting a smuggler of tobacco, which is a legal product, and the only sin, if you like, is evading excise on it. Well, do you see it that way?
No, I absolutely do not see it that way, Senator.
Okay.
It's a criminal offence, and to be honest with you, our employees are trusted with information that is our lifeblood. The information, the sensitive information we hold about the supply chain, about companies, what they're bringing in, what criminals are doing, it goes right up to the top secret national security level. We can't afford for people to think that it's okay to sell information to the enemy. And if that enemy is bringing tobacco, it could be the same person who's bringing narcotics the next day.
Okay.
So I hold no distinction. Anybody in the Border Force who's doing the wrong thing will be dealt with the same, in my view, and it's corruption. It's intolerable.
Yeah, where I was coming from was whether they see them as equally significant.
Well, Senator, if I may, the interconnection of crime, the very same criminal groups who are engaged in what you describe as a lesser sin are often using that as a cash vehicle to subsidise and cross-subsidise other activities, including murder, extortion, drug trafficking, illicit weapons trafficking, etc. So we have a zero tolerance view of anyone who breaks any law, and we don't distinguish between the laws that you pass as parliamentarians as to which represent greater or lesser sins.
The other thing, Senator, I might just add a bit of context. So my experience is I've got nearly 40 years in policing and law enforcement experience, including investigating corruption. And most police officers and most Border Force officers join their organisations, spend 30 years in their career and do the right thing the entire time. There's a small percentage who become corrupt. Generally speaking, don't join corrupt. And what happens is there's an erosion of their value system because they start to, buy drugs on a Friday night, and then somebody finds out they're a police officer or Border Force officer and they've got their talons into them. And there's an erosion of that value system over time, and they become increasingly a bigger problem because everything else becomes socialised as being okay. It's only tobacco. It's okay. It's only a bit of ecstasy on Friday night. So in my experience, you've just got about a zero tolerance policy, as the Secretary said. And we do. We have, random drug and alcohol testing. We have a whole lot of regimes in across our organisation to try and make sure, from our recruitment practices onwards, that we're not bringing people into the organisation who are not going to do the right thing.
All right. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Senator.